Welcome to the Wiss Mama Bear Podcast, Episode 17. I'm your host, Sarah Yacoub. Today's topic, bad joke or dog whistle? On November 12, 2020, Dane County Republicans tweeted a response to a tweet from right-wing conspiracy theorist extremist Jack Posobiec. For those of you who don't know who Jack Posobiec is, join the club. While it doesn't take long to figure out he's pretty fringe, he is a naval veteran with 1.2 million Twitter followers. Jack wrote on November 12, 2020, quote, "It's time to close the mail-in ballot loophole, end ghost ballots, check registrations, and enact common sense ballot control." Close quote. Okay, not inherently extremist. On its face, it seems like he's advocating for tightening up ballot security. The tweet polled over 25,000 likes. The Republican Party of Dane County tweeted in response, quote, "Yes, there are too many Democrats and left-leaning independent voters. If we can't convert them, we'll disenfranchise them. If you can't beat them, purge them. Sad." Close quote. Personal disclosure alert, my spectrum may have been showing as I read this, as I read it literally. A friend of mine in Madison read it as sarcasm. Who is correct? As I continue to mull this over, I think it could actually be us both, as there are two rational interpretations. The one that prevails depends largely on the political context or environment of the person receiving the message. For example, in the context of Mitt Romney's Republican Party, Jack Posobiec is an obvious lunatic whom no rational person takes seriously. Dane County Republicans casting shade on him is not on its face bizarre. In fact, if Dane County Republicans are trying to rebrand themselves back to some form of political sanity and away from the party of tinfoil hat conspiracy theories, sarcastically pointing out the absurdity of someone like Jack Posobiec makes sense. Here's the problem. While Jack Posobiec is absurd, his tweet at issue is not on its face absurd. He's very seriously making suggestions to tighten up ballot security. While one could interpret, quote, "close the mail-in ballot loophole" as disenfranchising lawful voters, that interpretation is not obvious. Instead, as he writes, it sounds like there is a loophole in existence that is compromising ballot security. I'm not exactly sure what he means when he says, quote, "end ghost ballots." If it means what I think it does, plenty of states in the nation agree that dead people do not get to vote. Again, nothing extreme or particularly scandalous here. The reality is, Wisconsin isn't run by or defined by Mitt Romney's Republican Party, but rather Donald Trump's. In Donald's Republican Party, someone like Jack Posobiec is par for the course. As someone who lives in Trumpland, Wisconsin, where nothing about Jack's post resonates as unreasonable or extreme, it doesn't make sense that county Republicans would be joking about or making fun of him for it. Even better, Wisconsin Republicans have a history of targeting Democratic communities and purging voters. In Donald Trump's Wisconsin, extremists and county party leaders regularly express that Democratic or independent policy perspectives are the product of mental illness. I kid you not. It's not a stretch that a county party would very seriously be advocating for shutting down voters who are not of sound mind to participate in our election. We are a society, after all, that deals with mentally incapacitated adults all the time. The reality is, some people are not of sound mind. For a political party to then use that as a basis to shut down voting, again, is not totally extreme in this context. The Dane County Republican Party tweet at issue has been floating around for nearly a month. Folks have expressed confusion over the intent of the post. Others have responded to it as a tweet written in all seriousness. Nevertheless, Dane County Republicans have issued no clarifications, no retractions. The tweet stands. At best, it's a bad joke, a failure to use sarcasm in a way that makes the intent that it's supposed to be funny clear. At best, it's the Dane County Republican Party, quote, joking about voter disenfranchisement. At worst, it's dead serious and direct insight into what leadership in the Wisconsin Republican Party thinks of free thinking and or dissent. Equally as bad, whether intended or not, it serves as a dog whistle to extremists. Validation in their narratives that independent or democratic policy perspectives are the product of mental illness. A cover for that which extremists do in furtherance of winning at all costs. Local extremist groups unapologetically equate Democrats to Nazis. What's horrifying is that this doesn't seem to be a deal breaker for other Republicans in the community in their choice to either associate with or quietly enable these extremist groups. So while I would like to think we are a community of Mitt Romney Republicans, the reality is we are among a string of counties who voted for Donald Trump, which communicates a willingness to compromise one's morals and values if it means chasing power. The reality is that whatever Mitt Romney Republicans we do have in the community, they are drowned out by the volume and vitriol of extremists. Where are our local Republican office holders in all of this? Hiding, silent. They enjoy the passion and organization of the extremists, the hatred and lies spread to denigrate their opponent to their benefit. Whether they themselves are conspiracy theorists or extremists really has little to do with it, as their silence and failure to denounce them only empowers them. Our local Republican office holders have so successfully bastardized the concept of leadership and public service that they have conditioned their voters not to want or expect much beyond incompetence and/or corruption from government. Our assembly representative does not live in the 30th Assembly District. He does not actually go to work, despite the fact that he collects a taxpayer-paid salary for full-time work that he simply does not do. He invests his money in Florida, in a business that he hides from taxpayers, and not here in Wisconsin. Who cares? He convinced us that his opponent, me, is the functional equivalent of a prime housing Nancy Pelosi, #the100, a socialist, and a bad person. He has an R next to his name on the ballot. We've only ever voted Republican. So, who cares that he's corrupt? Aren't they all? Identity politics strikes again. If you ask most anyone if they could go back in time and take out the Nazi regime in Germany, would they do it? Of course. What if you had to lie, cheat, and steal to pull it off? To prevent the Holocaust, most people, if they're being honest, would say yes, do it. There's no good option. Go with the one that causes the least harm. The danger of extremists like Donald Trump convincing their base that their neighbors and fellow Americans are Nazis is that they condition those people to be of a mindset that winning at all costs is not only okay, but honorable, patriotic. It's a dangerous psychology to walk, and it's something that is being done with little to no regard for how it will literally destroy our country as we know and love her. Senator Ron Johnson defended his failure to publicly recognize President-elect Joe Biden as the winner of the presidential election this November. He called it no big deal. Our country will survive it, he said. The arrogance. Our country survives because those who care enough to fight for her don't stick their heads in the sand when the very foundation of her existence is under attack. This past week, Donald Trump stood before yet another superspreader rally and told those in attendance that they, like him, are all victims. Again, a dangerous psychological path to walk. So here's the thing about dog whistles. They're terribly effective, and usually without the accountability that one would expect to follow the signaling of or supporting the ugliest subsets of humanity. Why? Because the intended audience hears the message that validates and empowers loud and clear, while the rest of us argue over whether there was even a message at all, whether a message even exists. We argue over whether the words posted were written literally or as a joke. We argue over what should be the reaction to those words, or how much reaction we should give it. Those words carry the intended power to the intended audience, and those in a position to do something about it are having intellectual academic discussions about semantics. The bottom line is that words matter. Want to know what else matters? Context. By now, the Dane County Republicans have received more than enough feedback to be on notice that there is a problem, that if they truly intended this tweet to be a joke, it failed, or rather that joking about voter disenfranchisement isn't in fact funny, especially where their party has a history of doing just that. But let's look to other posts by the Dane County Republicans for insight into their intent. There are signs of rationality or reasonableness. They did, after all, retweet a tweet congratulating President-elect Joe Biden on his win. Shouldn't actually be a big deal, except that too many Republican politicians still refuse to be honest or honorable on this. Their silence and refusal to recognize the winner of the presidential election is deafening. Looking at the rest of their tweets, however, there is no shortage of extremist messaging. Signals to Wisconsin's Trump extremists that Dane County Republicans ultimately stand with them and speak their language. For example, they recently posted a graphic advertising for a, quote, live free or die rally. It goes on to explain how we are about to be in a civil war, that the 2020 election was stolen, and that, quote, if the theft succeeds, there will be no more honest elections, close quote. Dangerous words, manipulative psychology of extremists. In another tweet, on November 4th, 2020, the tweet reads, quote, remember what President Trump said. He'll lose only if they cheat. He's losing, so they're obviously cheating. We're going to win Dane County. On to the recount. Hashtag Trump 2024. Hashtag Trump 2020. Hashtag MAGA. Our own Justice Department, as well as bipartisan states throughout the nation, have all said no significant large-scale fraud, nothing to suggest cheating, and still, a tweet undermining the integrity of a United States election stands. Our First Amendment freedom of speech is a privilege of our great country. With that privilege comes the responsibility of speaking up for right in the face of wrong, the responsibility to not stick our heads in the sand, however socially convenient to do so, a responsibility to fight for truth even when she's an inconvenient rescue. It is time to redefine or change how we look at fear. F-E-A-R. F, fight for truth. E, even when she is A, an inconvenient. R, rescue. Episode 18 tomorrow. See you there.